Yeah, indeed. All right, let's get the latest then on those developments in Afghanistan. Bloomberg's Joe Mathieu joins us now from Washington, D.C. Joe, take us through everything that we know so far.
Pretty remarkable to see this confirmation from the spokesman at the Pentagon, John Kirby, as you were just reading on the air, Alex. We've got a series of explosions here, a coordinated attack. We're really trying to be careful, though, with what we know and what we do not know. As the sun sets in Kabul, there are a lot of reports of casualties. There are a lot of reports of coordination here around the airport, but this is the very argument that this White House has been making for leaving. Over the past couple of days, the Pentagon briefings, the White House briefings, words that we've heard from the White House National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, have referred to potential terrorist attacks from ISIS-K. We've heard this on a daily basis when they make the case for leaving and not staying beyond August 31st. In terms of what's happening at the White House right now, we've seen a series of delayed briefings. The schedule has been thrown out the window here, and we do know, as we wait for a Pentagon briefing and a White House briefing around noontime today, we do know that President Biden has been briefed on this. Not only that, he was in the Situation Room when the blast, that first blast, occurred. That's a pretty remarkable coincidence, or at least a case of good timing for the president, because all of the tools there that go all the way down the chain of command are at his hands. And it is possible, because we do have satellites, we have birds, as they call them, over Kabul in this very critical time. It's possible he was seeing real-time images of what was happening on the ground. So we're going to see the circles wagging here for a bit at the White House. They've gone quiet for a moment, but then we'll have briefings from the Pentagon and from the White House in the next couple of hours.
Joe, Western intelligence agencies had warned of an imminent threat. What does it mean for evacuations?
Well, that's a great question. We have at least 1,500 Americans, as we learned yesterday, still in the country. We have 5,000 to 6,000 troops all in one area, and that's why this was a target, of course. We're not at Bagram anymore. We're only at H-Kaya, at that airport in Kabul, and of course the Taliban controls the area for the most part outside of that airport. It's unclear what's going to happen to flights overnight here. It's unclear what happens to all of those people who were in line at the gates. These were already dangerous areas, and the idea of suicide bombers walking into that zone creates ever more chaos, not just for our troops, but of course for the civilians who are trying to get out.
Yeah, and I wonder, Joe, what appropriate response is going to be here? I mean, how do you retaliate in this kind of situation? How do you then secure the evacuation of those that still haven't yet been evacuated? And how do you deal with that August 31st timeline? Can you take us inside best information you may have about the conversations like that are unfolding at the White House right now?
All great questions. The White House has a lot of questions to answer today, but we know that the Pentagon has been looking at a series of possible scenarios that have included a terror attack, that have also included going outside of the airport gates to find Americans and chopper them into that zone. We have seen a series of rescues already that have taken place in the last week where Americans were not able to get to the gates. This could become a much more determined effort to find people and get them to that airport once it's deemed safe to get them out of the country. Remember, we're not only evacuating civilians, the troops themselves must soon leave. Earlier today, John Kirby, again the spokesman for the Pentagon, refuted a report that said everyone has to be out. We have 36 hours to get this done. But in the next couple of days, before the 31st arrives, we have to start getting military hardware and military people out of Kabul. That timeline could be accelerating as we speak. But then again, let's remember what President Biden said. We will leave on the 31st of August if the Taliban cooperates. Now, obviously, this is an ISIS attack. We don't know what kind of Taliban involvement there was, if any. There may have been none. But this type of activity could force the United States to push the timeline beyond August 31st and potentially use more military hardware, more military strategy to secure the airport.
Joe, as you rightly say, if these are Islamic State insurgents that actually are not friendly with the Taliban in Afghanistan or do not have friendly relationships with the Taliban in Afghanistan, how much does this further complicate an already very complicated situation on the ground?
Well, it's some thought that this was a possibility. Some thought it was inevitable, that there might be a suicide bomber, that there could be kidnappings, that there could be a hostage situation, and we still have several more days for this to unfold. But you're right. We've heard repeatedly from White House officials and from the national security apparatus here in Washington that ISIS is the enemy of the Taliban. They're not working together here. But there are also several factions of the Taliban out there. It's not just the de facto head of the Taliban in Kabul trying to paint this image of a 2.0 of a new Taliban. There are other factions of the Taliban throughout Afghanistan, and it's unclear where they stand on all of this. The fact of the matter is the U.S. is on its own here, the U.S. and its allies. And as we've heard from the president repeatedly, we have no reason to trust the Taliban at this point in time.
Joe, thank you very much for disseminating all the information for us. Joe Mathieu of Bloomberg. Just to recap some of those headlines, the Pentagon now confirming that there has been a second blast in Kabul near the Baron Hotel. They're also confirming that there are multiple U.S. and civilian casualties at the bombing that happened outside of the airport. We're going to bring you more details as they cross.